Hi, my name is Jay Sugarman, and I want to welcome you to Innovation Showcase. The main purpose of this ongoing series is to inform viewers about exciting innovations and creative individuals across the fields of business, science, technology, education, and the arts. Today, via Zoom, we're fortunate to have as our guest highly acclaimed children's author Lisa Rogers. Lisa's here today to inform us about her latest release entitled Joan Mitchell Paints a Symphony, an extremely engaging picture book that explores the life and creative process of abstract expressionist Joan Mitchell. Beautifully illustrated by Stacy Innerst, the book is a poetic interpretation of Mitchell's artistic journey, especially focused on how she translated her emotions, memories, and imagination into her paintings. In so doing, the book's designed to spark children's interest in art and creativity as they learn about a significant woman artist. Let's start by meeting Lisa and then finding all about Joan Mitchell Paints a Symphony. Welcome, Lisa. So delighted to be able to be here.
Thanks so much for having me, Jay. I'm thrilled to be here.
And first of all, congratulations to you and Stacy and such an incredible collaboration. Just eager to hear all about it shortly and have you inform viewers. But before we jump right to that, I think it would be of interest if you'd briefly maybe share a little bit about your background and your professional interests.
I grew up wanting to be an artist or a writer, something creative. I just didn't know how to do that. I didn't really have any models for that, but I did have books on art, and I had a lot of poetry in my life. I read a lot, and I went to a lot of museums. So that really shaped me, I think, as a person. I was a daydreamer. I was a good student. However, I didn't find a lot of joy in the work that I did at school. I really wanted to do something creative, but I was not brave enough to take an art class until I was a grown-up.
Mm.
And now painting is a part of my life, and writing has become the focus of my life.
Yeah. For those who aren't familiar with Joan Mitchell, before we get to the book, could you share a little bit about her background as maybe a person and an artist, please?
Sure. Joan Mitchell was born in 1925. So this year, 2025, marks the centennial of her birth. She grew up in Chicago, in an apartment overlooking Lake Michigan, which definitely informed her creative. She grew up in an apartment overlooking Lake Michigan, which definitely gave her an impetus for seeing beauty. Her mother was an editor of Poetry magazine, and her father was a prominent doctor, but he also painted. And she grew up going to the Art Institute of Chicago, where she saw the art of Vincent van Gogh for the first time. And she fell in love with his art, and that love stayed with her forever. She grew up with poets coming to her home, like
Wow.
Edna St. Vincent Millay and Robert Frost, William Carlos Williams.
Mm.
And
Wow.
she at age 10, she published a poem in Poetry magazine, which is full of visual imagery, and it's so beautiful. And I was able to include it in this book. So I think that is just a lovely way to encourage children to create and see that at age 10, you can publish a poem, you can use your creative talents, and you can develop your creative talents. So poetry remained a really important part of her life and was integral to her work her whole life.
What was it about her that attracted you to then go a step further, many steps further, and research and then produce this wonderful volume?
Well, I worked with another writer on a nonfiction book that highlighted 20 women artists and one painting for each of them. And my partner, Jean Leibowitz, focused on looking at a painting, and I focused on writing biography because I love biography. And that was really fun for me. So I did lots and lots of research for that book. It's called Discover Her Art, Women Artists and Their Masterpieces, and it was published by Chicago Review Press. But when I was researching Mitchell through scholarly pieces, exhibition catalogs, and the like, I discovered that she had created a group of paintings based on emotions and memories of a valley that she never even visited in France. And this, her dear friend and French composer, Giselle Barreau, told Joan Mitchell about this hidden valley where she would go. It was a place of refuge, a place where she felt safe. And Joan Mitchell then took her own emotions, her own memories, and created this beautiful 21 piece suite, she called it, of gorgeous, gorgeous paintings, monumental paintings. They're enormous. And when I learned that, I just felt something so visceral that I wanted to know more. And that's where how this picture book was born.
It's an incredible story and really helpful background information. With that, how did you go about then conceptualizing the book?
Well, this book is more like a poem than a typical picture book biography, or maybe the picture book biographies most people read as children. Picture book biographies have really changed, and I'm so happy that they have, because they are more accessible to children. I think they're more inspiring. They're not cradle to grave anymore. And they're not telling, they're showing young readers how people came to be who they are. And that's something I always wondered as a child. I would read biographies, but I never really understood the inspiration that these people had to create what they ended up creating. So for this book, I wanted to tell Mitchell's story through this group of paintings. And that's what I did. It is the first biography for children of Joan Mitchell, and I'm really honored to have done that, because there are too few biographies of women artists for children. There are many more, obviously, now than there were, but this particular book, for me, needed to show children how their own backgrounds, their own creativity can lead to something important and lasting.
Well, that message definitely comes across loud and clear. How did you choose the metaphor symphony to show Joan's creative process?
Well, these paintings were influenced by Giselle Barreau, a musician who wrote and still does write pieces for percussion and piano and other instruments. And Joan Mitchell loved music, and she painted to music. So when she worked late at night into her studio, she was playing music. She loved jazz music. She loved classical music. And the movement in her paintings is musical. The brushstrokes have so much movement, so much vitality. To me, they were a symphony.
How did the collaboration with Stacy Innerst come about? And speak a little bit about how that worked over the course of the book, please.
Sure. So first of all, Stacy Innerst was the perfect pick for these illustrations. He's brilliant, he's celebrated, and he studied Joan Mitchell in art school.
Oh, fabulous.
So it was extra special that he chose to work on this book. One of my students once told me that it's the art that really makes the book. And of course, because it's a picture book, I completely agree. So my words inspire the illustrator to create what they create, but the artist and the writer usually work separately. So I submit my work to my editor, in this case, the wonderful Carolyn Yoder of Calkins Creek, which is an imprint of Astro Books for young readers. And then she chose Stacy, or invited Stacy, to create the art. for this book. And only really if there's a question about a detail, would there be any interaction between the artist and the writer. So, and I think that's really important because my words are inspiring the illustrator, but the expertise, the talent, the brilliance of the illustrator bring the words to life in a completely new way that I could never imagine.
No, most definitely. I mean, as we make our way through and sample some of the pages, just admiring both the artwork, truly masterpieces in their own right. And then could you share a little bit about how the art is taking us through, and your words are taking us through Joan's process through her work?
Right. Well, Stacy starts out with an image of the view from Joan Mitchell's property in Patouille in France. And it's a beautiful scene, but she said she didn't want to paint nature because nature is beautiful just as it is. How could anyone copy nature? What would be the point? So she felt that it was very important to have a different approach. She did not want to paint realistically. And and Stacy really took this work to another level with his own creative interpretation of my words melded with Joan's technique. And it was wonderful that he did that, because it's gorgeous. His own limitless imagination created just most beautiful pictures for this book. And really, in each spread, children can be part of Stacy's art as well as Joan Mitchell's art. They can bring their own feelings to the art. It's not telling the reader what to think or what to look at. The reader can explore every page, just like Joan Mitchell explored the valley in her mind.
Now, the book is like going to a museum. I mean, we can admire, and they're truly outstanding, just the images we're enjoying here, but really have to, whether it's going to the museum or seeing the book in your own hands, to truly appreciate the illustrations together with the wonderful words you've provided for the story.
Just
Just
stunning. It's stunning. And the art director did a beautiful job. I love how the words are placed on the page. I just love everything about this book. The colors, the vibrancy, movement, the texture, it's all there.
Because your words have that lyrical nature, how did you provide a balance between sort of factual and then this poetic interpretation that comes across?
Mm. Well, everything is based on fact, but I spin the poetry out of my own mind, my own feelings about what I know. And I can't really explain how it happens. It just does. And I think it is important for a writer to be able to do something like that, because otherwise it could just be an article in an encyclopedia, and that gives you all the facts, but it doesn't give you the emotion. And emotion to me is what hooks a reader and what makes a reader feel part of the journey throughout the book. So William Carlos Williams, who was the subject of my first book, said all poetry must contain emotion. And I believe that all picture books must contain emotion too, to resonate with the reader.
It sounds a little bit like how Joan approached her work, and she gets in that, what people call that flow state, where you're just immersed in the process and not aware of where you are, maybe things going on, because you're so involved. And sounds like that's sort of the muse for your writing as well.
It really is. And like Joan Mitchell said, it doesn't happen all the time, but when it does happen, it's marvelous. She likened that state to riding a bike with no hands.
Hmm.
And where you're just losing yourself in the moment and really time stops and you just create. And that happens to me when I paint, and it sometimes happens to me when I write. It's very fortuitous when it does happen, because otherwise a piece can become overworked very easily and strained, and that shows.
Focusing on Joan, why do you think it's important to introduce children to abstract expressionism?
Well, I think that it's a wonderful model for children, because if they're anything like me, and I know that a lot of children are like me because I taught children for 20 years at the elementary level, they
Mhm.
want to create art that looks exactly like what they see. And then they can become frustrated because that doesn't happen, because it's a very difficult thing to do. But to be able to create something from that comes out of your own self is so validating. I just did an activity thanks to the Massachusetts Center for the Book in East Hampton, Massachusetts, with children at the East Hampton Library. And I introduced them to this book and to Joan
Mm.
Mitchell's approach to painting. And they were so open and willing to try this approach. And they did an
Mm.
amazing job creating their own art.
Oh,
Everyone's was
fabulous.
different, but they used some of Joan's techniques in that they attached some panels to each other. They carried some brush strokes over the
Mm.
panels, and they were abstract works, and they used a lot of texture, lots of movement, and I think they had a wonderful time, and we're very proud of what they did. So to me, it's not, kids don't necessarily have to create a piece of art based on my book to get meaning out of it. But I really my hope is that they see that their own unique selves have value in whatever they create, and to bring that unique self is something important. It's something that contributes to the beauty of our world, and that is not able to be replicated by anyone else. And I think kids need to feel like they're important and that they have something to contribute. And every single child does.
Most definitely. And as you know extremely well from your experience in schools, there can't be enough of both the arts and encouraging children, students to be creative. So your book goes a long way to encouraging and accomplishing that. We happen to be stopping on this image, which really enjoy because it gets that, and especially the way that Stacy took your words that Joan's a composer and a conductor all at once. And you just see her like she's in front of an orchestra, directing things, trying to get certain sections to chime in. Just maybe a word or two about where we are in the book.
Well, it is an amazing spread. And that's another thing. So, as an artist, as a writer, as a composer, you are in control of what you create. And you can do whatever you like with it as long as it pleases you. So, it's an act of bravery to pick up a pencil, to write something, a paintbrush or an instrument. But if you are writing or composing or painting to your own soul, right, there's no wrong, and you get to do it all and enjoy it, and maybe it will resonate with other people, but really it has to satisfy oneself. And so I love this spread because, yes, all of the possible permutations of Joan and her creative endeavor here are on this page, and it's just stunning.
You gave a recent experience of working with students. How other ways, perhaps, do you see this book being used in schools or libraries or maybe even museums?
Sure. So I would love to see it as an inspiration for poetry activities as well as art activities in classrooms and museum programs. And I even created a lesson plan, which I will be on my website. That's based on Mitchell's words and her work. And the idea was to elicit emotion to spark sensory writing. I think one thing that children's writing often lacks is the sensory images that make writing appeal to other readers, right? To place the reader in the moment. They love reading literature like that, but it's very hard to know how to express that, right, as a child. So that's something that I love to teach children, to encourage them to do, to use sensory images in their writing. And so this lesson plan that I created can be used for writing, but it can also be used to spark an original piece of music or to create a painting.
Mhm. I know one of the goals in the book was to increase children's awareness of women artists. Could you speak a little bit about the importance of that again and how you hope this book furthers that?
Sure. I mean, increasingly, thank goodness, there are more books being published on women artists, and women artists are being welcomed and celebrated. But still, most people do not know the names of 5 women artists,
Yeah.
because I recently asked an audience, mostly adults, that, and they knew Georgia O'Keeffe, they knew Frida Kahlo, and that's pretty much it. Mary Cassatt is another one they usually know. But women have been creating art for centuries, and in Discover Her Art, we start with let's see, Rachel Reich. We have people from Lavinia Fontana 400 years ago. These were
Mm.
professional artists at that time. But of course, men have been writing the books about art and organizing the exhibitions, and that is changing. Thank goodness.
Most definitely. And I mean, this is one of the incredible ones. Definitely doesn't do it justice because, as you mentioned, each painting is large, to say the least. But this is a wonderful overview of the 21 works of art that Joan created for this undertaking. Mm.
It is another gorgeous spread, and I was lucky enough to go to a recent retrospective of Joan Mitchell's work
Oh,
at the Baltimore Museum of Art, and also to another exhibition of the David Zwirner Gallery in New York. And the paintings are massive, and I have pictures on my website of me with the pictures, because you can then see, and I show them when I do events, because it's very hard to imagine the scale of these paintings. But to just be in a room of her work and be surrounded by their
wow.
beauty and their immense size, it's overwhelming. But you can look at each one and take your time with each one, because there's so much to see. There's so much to see in each work. And so when I do my events, I show close-ups of some of the paintings so that children can see the layered work, the texture,
Mm.
brush strokes, and see how this is doable. It's not like she did it all at one time. And it's also a way to see how careful she was about creating each work. It's not about throwing down the paint. She said, I don't, hope for the best. I don't throw down the paint and hope for the best. I really pay attention to every stroke. So,
Wonderful. What's been some of the responses from children, educators, and others to the book so far?
well, I'm really happy to know that people love this book, and I know that museums are offering this book. So I'm
Hmm.
hoping that lots of educators will find a way to use it in their art education classes, and um, just give a wonderful book to a child. I think, I mean, it's had wonderful reviews, so it's always
Ella.
hard, however,
Ella.
to get a book noticed, but this one is stunning, and I hope it does resonate with lots of people.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Just gorgeous. Mentioned one outing recently with educators and students. Do you have other programming in mind, events coming up?
Well, I hope to do more events. I think that as those opportunities come up, I will be happy to take them. I did a launch where I was in conversation with two abstract artists, and that was really enlightening for me to learn about their own processes and then to share Joan Mitchell's process with the audience. So I would love to do something like that again. I'm happy to introduce this book anytime, pretty much anytime, anywhere, because I truly believe in validating kids' experiences and letting them know that they don't have to create a masterpiece, but that whatever they do, they're bringing something into the world that's not been seen before.
Well, in the closing credits, we'll have some contact information for people to stay in touch to find out about both upcoming events connected to this book and other work that you're involved with. Really like in closing, just the final couple of pages in the book, wonderful compliment to the poetic presentation of the book by giving readers some sort of nuts and bolts background information to then appreciate the book even more.
Right. It can't just be all poetry. um, but so there's a list of places to see her work. And actually, this year is a wonderful year to see her work because some works have been rejuvenated in preparation for 2025. And so they're on display all year.
Mm,
There's a map on the Joan Mitchell Foundation website of places where you can see her work, especially this year. And the Joan Mitchell Foundation was really integral in helping me make sure that my book was factual and
mm.
make sure that the illustrations accurately represented what they felt should be represented in her work. So they've also highlighted this book in their own press releases and on their website and social media. And so recently there was a piece in Forbes magazine that included the book, which is just lovely. So they've been very supportive, and I had a relationship with them through Discover Her Art. So they were great then, and they continue to be wonderful to me. But yeah, I think it's important to have background information that a teacher could use,
Mm.
parent could use, and also sources for more information if they want that. As I said, the poem that Joan Mitchell wrote is included in here. And there are illustrations so that the children can see Joan Mitchell as a child reading, and one of
Yeah.
her paintings, and her standing in front of one of her paintings, which also shows the monumental size of the work.
Lisa, unfortunately, we've come to the end of the program. Want to thank you so much for taking the time to be here, for giving us all the background information about Joan Mitchell Paints a Symphony. Congratulations again on such a fabulous publication and continued success with future endeavors.
Thank you so much, Jay. I love talking with you. Really appreciate this opportunity.
Also want to thank those of you watching for joining us and hope you'll be able to tune in next time.